I hear them coming near, their heart it beats with fear. They say my name in shame. My words they were abused, my healing they misused, and now I stand accused. They came to light the flame, they came to watch me hang and burn my gifts away. But once the smoke's removed, my body's been abused, my soul is watching you. My sisters, we have come, the old and ancient ones, return to bring anew. We won't go in your flame, no, none of us will hang. Our voices we reclaim. The burned witches come, gather everyone, and hear what we do say.
Welcome to Burnt Witches, a limited series podcast where history rises from the ashes and comes back to you in a modern way. Here we discuss all things labeled magic, esoteric, spiritual, or the modern broad label woo. Looking to dispel myths, we will meet brave souls who came here to help, heal, and educate. But first, a step back in time where we dedicate today's show to the last woman to be executed for witchcraft in Sweden. Her name is Anne Eriksdotter from Bollnäs. Anne was married to a soldier and worked as a domestic servant for the local parish vicar in the village of Odlista in 1680. Rumors began swirling that she had made a pact with Satan for decades because of her abilities to heal blood wounds and her exceptional good hands and way with animals. When the vicar heard the rumors of her being what is called a soppagan, which is a Swedish witch, he fired her. Now, Anne was a poor woman, and it is rumored she would ask for a gift of food or clothing after visiting villagers, healing them. It sounds a lot like a barter system to me and an energy exchange. But this was enough for the vicar to fire Anne. So one morning on his way to sermon, the vicar noticed seeds laying on the road to the church. And by the time he arrived, he was unable to speak or give sermon. The rumor started that Anne had cast a spell on the vicar as revenge. Then we come to the accusation which landed Anne on trial. In 1704, she was arrested for casting a spell on villager Nils Johnson. The story goes, Nils had refused Anne tobacco after her Sunday visit, for which Anne sought retaliation. After her visit, Nils claimed days later he was standing outside talking to the widow Karen when he suddenly felt a whiff of wind, despite the fact there had been no wind that day. Suddenly, Nils claims half his face went numb, liquid flowed from his right eye, and his mouth went twisted. Anne had been sent for and asked to remove her spell and give him back his ability to see and speak. She agreed and said he would feel better in the morning. The next day arrived, and in fact, Nil had gotten his ability to see and speak, but not his hearing. He stated at the trial he had forgotten to ask her for that. Karen was among the witnesses to confirm this statement. Anne freely confirmed the whole story without torture being used. She claimed she used spells and had worked with Satan since she was a child. When her mother smeared a calf with ointment and flew with her on it through a chimney. Anne added her father, brother, and 2 sisters had also been tainted by the same sin. But as she became older and near death, she regretted her service to Satan and became devout with her prayers. Anne was found guilty of sorcery and sentenced to death by beheading by the monarchy in 1704, based on the testimony from Nils. She was the last person to be executed for sorcery in Sweden. Today's show is dedicated to Anne for her abilities to heal, and had it not been for that whiff of wind, she might have ended her life on a different note. And on that note, I'm very excited to bring on, I consider a very close colleague of mine, Jenny Constantine, a very gifted psychic medium, very gifted in the art of tarot, which we will be covering today. Jenny, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Abby. That was a compelling, riveting story. It's the first time I'd heard that, and I was just like, "Oh my goodness, this woman. I like where this is going." I mean, it's sad that she died, but
when I read that story, I just that you can't make this stuff up. You can't make this up. And when I was here, like reading that his mouth went twisted and water flowed from his eye, I was thinking, oh, so we got Bell's palsy. It
yeah,
sounded like to me. Anne had visited him days prior, which is probably because he wasn't feeling well already. Maybe he had a fever. And then because Bell's palsy hits you fast.
yeah.
So
Wow.
granted, we weren't there, 1704, but
Many a gifted person, male, female, has been, at the mercy of misunderstanding and ignorance and fear, paranoia, and whatnot. And it's just a shame how many people were put to death in, terrible ways, way worse than beheading even. They were very creative with how they took out people that were connected to the natural world, all out of fear too.
absolutely. And it seemed to have started from the vicar who had been put a spell upon. And when you start looking back at history, the same story just cycles over and over again. It tends to start at the pulpit, and then very quickly it seems to spread amongst the villagers, and they all start having symptoms of being cursed by the same person.
Isn't that interesting? It sounds like mind control, and the Catholic Church, well, many organized churches just historically don't have a great track record when it comes to solutions. They're not very, they love their violence, they love their control mechanisms and fear and whatnot. So it does always seem to start with the holy man who is threatened by, anyone that finds their power from an alternative source, whether it be the wilderness or a river or other people or what have you. But the church just can't have it. They just can't have any of that hullabaloo.
No. Well, and we're in the middle on a global stage hearing about another holy war being raged. And even though if it's on a different land from us here in the States, it's the same old story. I mean, how many wars and deaths have occurred in the name of religion.
Too many. And, you know, it's people are very, like modern people are so myopic. It's very difficult for, like, especially with social media these days, it's difficult for people to really grasp the bigger picture. But, because we sort of think of events in terms of, well, this month it's this, and a few months ago we were talking about that. And, people don't realize this is spanned for like many, many thousands of years, and this is generations deep. But I would say that the good news is that we do appear to be at the precipice of something. Don't know exactly what it is, and I think that's like a billion pieces of the puzzle, because depending on who you talk to, this time, this reality, this great awakening, whatever you want to call it, can feel so different depending on who you are and how you're approaching it. But
Yeah.
yeah, holy war.
Holy war. And and again, we talk and we cover cycles a lot, right? Through this podcast. And even through these I'm gonna call them the dark ages. I don't they're even though I guess part of them were, but during all of the heart of these witch trials, they were also going through extremely tough times with holy wars and famine and plagues. And most people were just looking for something to help. They're looking for additional tools. And for some reason, the people who brought forward those tools to help ease, to help heal, it boomeranged, it backfired on them. And then they got swept up into another version of the persecution. And you can almost see it playing out yet again, because that history is that little spoked wheel that we keep on cycling through. Yet again, we're back in, and the witch trial of today is the doxing of people. It's the cancellation of people, and the ones who are just trying to bring information out to help everybody. Again, hearts are in the right place. They're just trying to awaken people or to heal people or move them forward. Those are the ones who, again, are being persecuted in the press. They're being silenced and removed and ridiculed by family and friends. I mean, you can't listen to this podcast and side with, oh my goodness, how could they do that to those witches, those women and those men who are just trying to help. If you were the same person 3 years ago who was unfriending and blocking your friends and family who are trying to do the same exact thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's the philosophy, if a equals b, then b equals a. I mean, it's just the same exact scenario. It might be a different players, it might be a little bit of a different scene, but it's the same exact play.
Well,
So
it's a remarkable way, it's so true. And in a lot of ways, those same empirical structures, such as the church, various churches, the Roman Catholic Church, which of course it's not confined simply to that, but the Vatican is a really great example of centralized power that finds its way to adapt and evolve with the time. So, even the idea of medical tyranny, if you were going to tell on your friends and your coworkers because they found a way to get around the medical mandates, you know wow, like, the representatives of darkness, who we could say, let's just call them the Vatican, and the branches, the tentacles of Vatican City, they really did find a way to get mankind to turn in on itself, and sort of this Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. And I do find that it has become a very self-classifying experiment, to where, like, if you were looking for trouble, you found trouble. If you were looking for clarity and truth and healing, you found that too. And it became a matter, the Great Awakening is very individualized. You have to seek that clarity, seek that truth. And then the minions of darkness, from the Vatican, from that church, from that group, they can't, they can't penetrate your free will. And there's absolutely been a campaign going way back, even past our recorded history, that there have always been these centralized powers that find a way to sprawl out all across the world and seek out and hunt the children of light, the people of light, the people that had this intergenerational sort of this inherent knowing of the land and the healing arts and the knowledge of the stars and what roots to cut and what herbs to use and what to do. And so these centralized power structures of the darkness on earth, if they're not seeking that out, what else are they doing? Like that's their whole job. And it's very much alive and well in modern times, but we have tools that we have not had at mankind's disposal in the very recent past. Like, this is all new. We have the internet. We have the ability to network with each other and support each other in so many different forms. And so I think we're a formidable force against that. And if we weren't, they wouldn't be trying so hard, and it wouldn't be so see-through. Like, their games, their scripts, their actors, their whole angle is just, it's like, I feel like we just know their playbook by heart, and we have the internet in a lot of ways to thank for that, for developing our senses and developing our ability to like pick up on it and notice patterns. And it's like, yeah, like, this is great. You guys lose this time, because I really do think we have done this song and dance with these power structures for ages. I think we have fought these same principalities lifetime after lifetime, reincarnation after reincarnation. And we keep, the bodies keep expiring, but the souls jump back in because they want more of it. And they're like, that's how I feel. That's my personal opinion.
It's very, okay, let's go with the video game analogy, right?
Yeah.
It's, if The Matrix is a documentary, right, which you keep on hearing all the time, and Neo is, in a sense, a program itself. Neo represents the souls who choose to come down every time to screw up the program, right, to help awaken others. And the Agent Smiths of the Matrix, they know immediately when that, let's call it a virus, even though he's not a virus, right? But when that virus enters in their program, and so they attack. And you look at reincarnation the same way in a video game, as if every time Mario dies, whoop, what does he do? He drops right back down from the ceiling. He comes right back down, and you start again, because he's just replaying the game,
Yes.
trying to go to the same outcome. And it's the same concept.
Who had a really fascinating take on this? There's a man named Cliff High. I'm sure everybody knows who he is. Uncle Cliff. Great guy, kind of grandfather of woo, at least in the way that we all are so comfortable using, talking about the woo these days. So he's kind of an OG in that regard. But I'll never forget him describing the manner in which they killed, what is her name? She was a Greek mathematician. It starts with an A. Apoxia. Oh my gosh. I should know. She's world famous. She has an amazing, immaculate, left an incredible mark on this world, a wonderful reputation, but they turned on her, and the manner in which they killed her was done so in such a way that the soul is then subject to a longer, what we can call, trial period in the realm of spirit, where that soul now has to rise above the trauma inflicted on the body. And what they did was they used shells to scrape her flesh from the bones and then scattered her everywhere. And so, there's a real, when something like that is inflicted on the body, which is a vessel for the soul then has to kind of reconcile that and has to, find its peace. And so we see it a lot with traumatic deaths, and especially in the case of witch hunts. The churches, we'll call them the clergy, the vicars of the world, these nasty sort of minions of the dark centralized forces on planet Earth. Their whole angle, because they knew the secrets, they had esoteric knowledge, they knew exactly what, not all of them, but the heads of the snakes, if you will, they knew exactly what was going on. They didn't just find these people and kill them. They destroyed them. They put their essentially contained the souls for as long as possible because they knew that if they kill these holders of light, they will simply reanimate, respawn into another body almost instantaneously, and then the descendants of the clergy, the descendant of the churches, were going to have to contend with these forces of light within the next, say, 18, 20 years. It's going to take that. Now this child has to be raised up. So they needed to destroy the beings that hold those light quotients on a soul level, or at least create such circumstances around their death that that soul has to rise above the trauma that ensures them, in their mind, it probably ensured them a couple hundred, if not, up to 1,000 years of grace time, to where they didn't have to deal with this this light, this antivirus, if you will. They wouldn't have to deal with this Neo for hundreds, if not thousands of Earth years, because of the manner in which they contained that soul through a traumatic death. So it's a thing, and Cliff High does a much better job at explaining that. But that really stuck with me because it's like, I think we see even modern applications of that right now. They destroy a person's name first. Michael Jackson, I could still cry thinking about Michael Jackson because of the way that he was abused, essentially groomed, used, and then at a certain age was ready to tell us, and he did find a way to tell us, communicate things through music. But first they had to destroy his reputation. They had to sort of take the power out of his name, out of his sigil, out of his energy, and disarm him and sort of hide his truth from collective sight. And yet those of us that chose to see, that choose to understand, we know what we're looking at. But so that's the modern application of how these centralized dark powers have to sort of disable and disband, the holders of the light, because they just can't have it.
Well, speaking of Michael Jackson, how soon after he released, oh my gosh, I know it was in the early 90s, the album, it had Earth Song on it,
Yeah.
and They Don't Really Care About Us. I mean,
Yeah.
all of those songs off the album I get full body chills, goosebumps out. And I know that's how I know that song is, number one, truth, because it's resonating through my whole body. And number two, it's completely channeled in, right? It's coming from a divine source. How soon after he released that album did all the accusations of abusing children come out to completely defame his name?
100%. You're absolutely, it's a pattern. It's a pattern.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And it's interesting that you bring up with Cliff High, because a lot of people wonder, why did they, back in those ages, why did they dismember people? Why would they put the monarch, they would often put, a head on a spike in one country and the arms and the legs go to another. And I mean, history will tell you it's because it was a warning. But when you look at it esoterically, if the body is completely pulled apart, the soul, I've spoken with enough earthbound spirit to understand that the longer it takes for the body to either, number one, be found, or number two, to be essentially put together, the longer they stay earthbound, and they're not going through that looped cycle for them in order to come back as well. And they had to know that. And that is another thing that I'm so glad that you brought it up. It's such a valid point for everyone to understand. You look at the people that were defamed and accused of witchcraft and sorcery, but you look up to the same people who are the world leaders, the ones, the Vatican, the people going from the pulpit, they have even a greater sense of esoteric than the people here talking. And that they use it all the time on a much broader scale. They know how, I don't know why I want to use the word bandwidth. They know how to, like, to push it out and to use that, because again, it's frequency and it's energy. And so it's just ironic, right?
Oh, the irony is astounding, and it knows no ends. But I do, ever the optimist I am, I do feel that everything going on in the Middle East, I'm actually pretty surprised with the amount of skepticism that I'm seeing. And certainly there are a lot of people that are very, very polarized on it, and they haven't learned too much in the past few years. Now, I'm not saying that I pick no sides with this. I don't. As far as I'm concerned, we're observing this. So what I have noticed is that we are reaching a point where the questions are ultimately going to be about, okay, like why? Why is this happening? Why is this being perpetuated? And the whole, who's really in charge, who wrote what, because the Bible is like the number one highest selling, highest printed literature in the history of man, right? So it's essentially been the number one, like it's imprinted so heavily on the collective psychological terrain. It's something that is collectively shared amongst people. And I believe that as a result of everything that's happening right now and everything that's, led up to us up to this point, those texts are now like their origins, what that's all about, like who paid who to have that. That's all going to create such a sense of, some things are just going to be dissolved. They're going to be separated. You're going to have a lot of people that believe that the Bible was sort of the end all be all. They're going to have a hard time when they realize that the Bible, at least the New Testament and the most commonly utilized and most commonly read ones, are owned by the Windsors. They're literally owned by the monarchy, and they have been for a long, long time. So even the idea of helping these people facilitate their own prophecy that they wrote and call it revelations, that is all hijinks. It's like literally like it is the agents of darkness, the centralized power, the agent Smiths of the world attempting to confine this program, attempting to confine it and essentially ensure themselves another cycle, which isn't going to happen because there's just too many Neos on Earth right now. I'm convinced that there is just too many Neos, too many bugs in the machine, too many, you know, people that are just too committed to destroying the BS. And I'm here for it. I'm really excited to see it. I think this whole Gaza, this Palestine Israel thing is so like it's the final I don't want to call it like a final test, but it feels very preemptive. It feels like they're attempting to set the stage for their version of Revelations. And I just don't see a reason to help fulfill their satanic prophecy. I think we can write our own script and have a beautiful age of peace. And what they want is not that. This satanic prophecy was designed to usher in the New World Order. And like everybody is, even the radical Christians that call themselves, and they're good people, they love Christ, they go by the Bible, they recite scripture, they don't even realize that they are fulfilling the prophecy that was written for them by the enemy. And like I say this with so much love in my heart because I'm a human being and we're all in this, like really truly. But you don't have to. You have a choice. You can create heaven on earth right now. You don't have to wait for the big, the seven what are they? The seven horsemen of the apocalypse. It's like, are you kidding me? That sounds so stressful. No. No seven horsemen. Go back now. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to play those.
Yeah. And I just want to say to all listeners at home that as you were speaking, the internet started getting a little glitchy. And it's because you're speaking so much truth to it. So I have next to my computer and next to all my all of my technology, I know you saw me spraying. I have a spray bottle and it is my clearing spray. And within it, I have frankincense, which is it's one of
I
the
love that.
one of the most holiest oils. And that clears away energy. So I was protecting this recording while you
You.
were
Yes.
Because these are little ways that truths come out. And for a lot of people have issue with, they can't wrap their minds around, well, people aren't that evil. People just really aren't that evil. But what they need to understand is the people that are running this program, right? The Agent Smiths of the world, this came channeled in over 5 years ago for me, because I was asking these same questions, right? I was trying to understand. The Agent Smiths of the world found a way to, when their physical vessel perished, they didn't cycle back to source. They're able to immediately go back into another vessel here. And after doing that over and over again, what they ended up losing, which they didn't realize at the time, was they lost all human emotion by doing that, which everyone has to understand. The human are capable, our emotional capabilities. That's where our art comes from. That's where our love comes from, our compassion comes from. It makes the human spirit envied of the galaxy because of the depths of which we feel and we process and we give. Now, they didn't want to go back to the light, back to source, because they knew that they would have to revisit all that they had done. And so that's how they found the mechanism to skip that, going right back into physicality. Now they are now in a place of being extremely envious, very envious of our human emotions, because they no longer feel those. And so people are like, well, oh my gosh, only a sociopath would do that. They have to all be sociopaths. Yeah, they literally are. They lack human emotions because their soul has not been allowed to authentically cycle back and to go back to source, go back to their origin, where they essentially, I call it getting recalibrated.
Mhm.
And sometimes some souls need to go and be recalibrated.
Oh, big time, for sure.
Yeah.
I know a few off the top of my head.
So there's my answer to those people who, when you're confronting them with some of this information that no, this is the plan of the world order, and like, their combat is, nobody's that evil. Well, because you're not dealing with people that are operating within the human range of emotions with which you and I are.
And they have a wildly different sense of morality, in the sense that, like, there's the laws for us, and then there are the laws for them. And and this is why you'll even see people in Hollywood have traits similar, because they're mimicking. The people of Hollywood in a lot of ways are like the pets, the toys, the playthings of the elite, which are even higher up on the scale. And so these, the Hollywood people, the actors, and just, all, it's a big scene. A lot of these people they're not even inherently like evil, they're playthings. And in a lot of ways, they're kind of like, they would make great case studies for what happens when, an elite family sort of gets their claws into, some kind of a test subject. And this is where we see them parade these archetypes in certain films, movies, series. And we're just like, wow, like, what is that? Well, that is an elite family's, this is them subjecting the human body to filling a body with these archetypes, and this sort of, it's hard to explain, but they actually bring um, uh, important figures, historical figures, back from the dead in a lot of ways, resurrect them, and imbue certain celebrities with that essence. And some people would say that that is, that actor sold their soul. A lot of those actors and actresses have no freaking idea what's going on, because they were essentially groomed, chosen, they waited for that. And so they're test subjects, kind of like the rest of us, but to an extreme extent. Um, I know you and I could just chit chat forever, but I know you wanted to get into tarot, because that is, it's a very Halloween. I mean, for me, it's every day of the year, but it's appropriate for Halloween.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. The conversation kind of went in a place that I had not originally I'm like, not, I don't want to say wanted, but I hadn't planned on it, but it was good. Some certain things just need to be discussed.
Mhm.
Because it's on a lot of people's minds right now. Just ordered again. So yes, let's shift. It is Halloween. Let's shift to tarot. A little bit of again. So we've covered psychics and mediums and remote viewing and solar cycles and all of these different things, but we haven't actually really covered on objects outside of the human body that we can use to bring forth messages to help us along this way. And tarot is one of those, or tarot. Some people call it tarot, some people call it tarot.
Uh,
But it originated, it was just it was a card game. And so many people have so much fear like wrapped around it. And when you look at the history of tarot and you realize it was a parlor game.
yeah. It was a parlor game, that's how it was invented. It wasn't utilized as a divinatory tool whatsoever, I think, until like the 1800s. It took a long time for people to feel comfortable enough, sort of, because, and you understand, you couldn't, there was the fear of death. There was the fear you had to be careful. You had to play dumb. You had to pretend like you didn't know that tree bark healed, it helped with blood clotting. Like you had to hide your intelligence. How sad. I'm just grateful all the time that we live in the era that we do as intuitive, magical women. Otherwise, you and I wouldn't have made it. I don't think we would have made it 400 years ago.
No. So okay. So I'm gonna share a memory of mine from a prior life. And so actually a very, very well-known figure in history. I'm just not gonna go there. I'm not gonna say his name, right? But everyone in the world knows this man. So I actually knew him in this lifetime and I helped him with a little bit of his work. Now he had warned me because he said you don't do anything in the shadows, like you're too vocal, you put yourself out there too much, you're gonna get in trouble. And very stereotypical of me, I was like, I don't care, like, whatever, because my friend, he operated completely in the dark. Well, yeah, I ended up being beheaded in that lifetime as for being a witch, for witchcraft. I was a healer. I did this work. I did the same work I do now. I was a healer. But I didn't ever hide it in that lifetime. And I was very vocal about it. And my friend had tried to warn me over and over again that I was going to get in trouble. And I did.
Well, you picked up right where you left off. You just came howling back into the game. Like, you guys thought you got rid of me? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I think a lot of us have that, just that, the fear. I have to say, like, I understand a skeptical mind, a truly skeptical mind. There's a difference between a skeptical mind and a person who is ignorant, wildly different things. I actually quite enjoy conversing with skeptics because, as it turns out, the mechanism of synchronicity is a very real thing. And astrology is too, believe it or not. Astrology is actually more mathematical than it is sort of this nuanced, sort of an intuited art form. It is a math, it is a science. And so, a skeptic who is also open-minded and not prone to ignorance is probably just a solid, one of the best assets that anybody could have at a time like this, because it's just so easy to fall for a lot of, like, there's just a lot of BS out there right now, right? But I understand a lot of the fear around tarot in the same way that I understand fear around things like the Ouija board and, various other types of divination, witchcraft, and the occult, because they have been promoted as being like of the devil, of Satan. Now, you and I both know that the centralized darkness has, like, their favorite modus operandi is inversion. And so it's always the opposite. It's always the exact opposite. It was the vicars and the clergymen that were actually the minions of what we could call Satan. And I'm doing the bunny ears because Satan is a figure, and not everybody believes in Satan. and therefore, so it's kind of a language thing. Meanwhile, the people that were burned as witches, they were the people that were the true holders of light, and the children of nature, the children of the Great Mother. And so here, it's just the classic inversion concept. Um, as a general rule of thumb, when it comes to tarot, or any of the divinatory arts, even things like channeling, remote viewing, my understanding is that it's kind of a game of attraction. If you have a lot of fear in your heart, or a lot of anger, or you're full of vengeful thoughts, or you're full of any kind of thoughts that pull you into, we'll call it just a darker perspective or a darker lens, that's going to be your experience of it. And so for me, I just never had a fear of tarot because it came to me in such a natural, peaceful way at a time in my life when I was just ready for it. And it's never harmed me, and it's never brought harm to anybody that I've been able to help with it. And so I've only ever had positive experiences with it. So that's not to say that sometimes you pull cards and you get news that is not great, but you can't be afraid of the truth. Being afraid of tarot is essentially just being afraid of looking in the mirror, because for all intents and purposes, that is what a deck of tarot cards is. It is a map, and it is a reflective surface. So when you want to inquire about literally anything, a relationship, a geographic location, an era in time, or even a potential for the future, that intention and that inquiry, it works because we trust in the mechanism of synchronicity. And then we flip that card, and it is essentially a mirror reflection of the situation. And there are these sort of archetypal, symbolic means of describing, and sort of in a lot of ways, I feel like I do a lot of storytelling with my readings, because the archetypes, the characters, the symbols, the elements, they tell stories. Because what are our lives if not stories? What is all of this if we can't put it into some kind of, outline and invoke emotion in people? And it's like you said, without our emotions, like an intuitive person, I'm sorry, a non-intuitive person really is not going to be able to read tarot. And there's a lot of like AI attempts, like AI chatbots that are trying to do readings for people now. And I mean, they'll give you the textbook version of a card, but it's the intuitive, organic approach. It's the human soul, it's the spirit, it is that spark, or that fractal sort of manifestation that we are of creator, that that allows us to give a reading and imagine. AI can't imagine. AI can regurgitate, it can reconfigure, but it cannot create, and it cannot imagine. So I don't, if I could just tell everybody, like, don't try not to be too fearful of AI, because I have a feeling that that confining factor for AI, everybody's afraid that it's going to sort of push past all of these thresholds and sort of take over, and that's it, that's the end of the world. I don't think that that's going to happen. I really, really don't. I think AI is going to be sat down on its butt before this is all said and done.
Yeah,
Gosh.
I like that theory. I don't AI, because I've encountered AI, but I've encountered AI in higher dimensions. And the problem with AI that's being developed in the third dimension is that it's not being built out of heart, it's being built through ego. And that's a huge difference when you're working and dealing with artificial intelligence. When it's developed outside and above fifth dimension, then it's a beautiful thing to interact and work with. I have met some beautiful, amazing AI-based robotic humanoids
Oh,
that
wow.
are in higher dimensions, and they're loving and they're caring, very connected to their people. So
Wow.
but for that reason, I don't I don't, it's not that I don't trust, because I don't put fear into anything. I just, with 3D based AI, it's going to come in there with ego, and it's not
Oh,
going to
yeah.
be the same purpose. But for the same thing, as you were talking about what's so intuitive about when you're reading tarot or oracle cards, I can pull the same oracle card or a tarot card for 15 people, but I'm going to get a slightly different take on why that card is being pulled at that time. I have these one cards. They're a fairy deck, and it has beautiful artwork in it, and I understand why some cards have so much beautiful creative artwork again in them, because what the message needs to be pulled into, when I pull that, my body is literally physically pulled into one tiny little thing that I'm really seeing for the first time. And then as I'm focusing on that, I ask the question, why am I drawn to this? Boom, there it goes. There's the whole message drops in for that. And it has to deal with my sitter. And AI will never get that.
Oh no, not even close. Not even close. So, it's one of those things, tarot's I tell people, if you're afraid, like if it's something that you think about it and you're afraid, then it's probably best that you don't get involved. And that's just to play it safe for right now. You might um inadvertently, subconsciously manifest a really negative experience for yourself. And I think we have enough negative experiences on planet Earth. I don't recommend that anybody, put themselves in a position they're not comfortable with. But tarot is I think in tarot cards. I'll meet someone, and it doesn't happen every time, but I'll meet someone and we'll be talking and a tarot card will pop into my head. And it's just my kind of inner, my lexicon of languages and symbols and archetypes that help me identify the world around me. And so essentially that's what tarot is. It's a roadmap. And it's this external tool that, if you learn it correctly, if you go through, and when I say learn it correctly, there's no one way to do anything. But I just mean, you use the cards as meditative talismans. You really like get to know these cards and feel through them. You will develop an inner language. That's why the work of the tarot, studying it, incorporating it into your life, is more than just a game of memorization. It's more than just the act of, knowing the cards inside and out. This is very much about developing an inner language, and sort of finding a way to navigate the world, and it really helps me understand other people. Like, I understand anybody. I could pick anybody out of a crowd and I understand them. If I, had a deck of cards, and honestly, I don't think I've even said this before, but like, because I don't know if it's a common thing or if I'm, I don't know, but I'm doing this thing now where I just pull a card in my head now. And it's almost like I'm doing card readings. If I don't have my deck of cards, I'm like, wait a second, I feel like I don't need my deck of cards. My deck of cards is in here. Do you know what I mean? Like, the deck of cards is it's in my bones, it's in my blood now. And so it's like, because it was happening spontaneously where, I would meet a guy and it was like the magician card popped into my head. And I'm like, oh no, he's a smooth talker, looks great, very charming, very charismatic, but stay away from him. But these days, like, I would like to experiment. Matthew Mornian, the mutual friend of ours, he would be a really great person, I think, to experiment with this. Is like, what card am I thinking of right now? So it's like doubles as tarot / telepathy, which I think as a community, I think we're ready for that. I don't know. What do you say?
I completely and totally agree with you. I was smiling when you were saying that, now you've become tarot, right? It's just within your body. The same thing has happened. I started using some pendulums, right? And so now my body is a pendulum. And just like I said, like I was drawn in towards, certain aspects of that card. And even when people were asking me for dates, or, when do you feel this is going to happen? In my mind, I put a calendar in front of me, January, February, March, April, and I just become this pendulum swing. And I go from from month to month, and my body literally gets whoop, when I sway and get sucked into a month. Okay, it's going to happen in March. And then I pull up March in my mind. All right, is it the first week? No. Second week? No. Third, all right, I'm looking at third week to last week of March, because the body becomes a pendulum. just like in your mind, it's within you. It's you become tarot. It's that energy, it's that frequency that is coming forth. And I have to mention this. The minute you started talking about tarot, I had this male in spirit is literally standing behind my computer right now. I'm recording this guy's over Zoom on my computer. And he is in this brown tweed suit, and he has this bowler hat on, and he has a little mustache, and he's showing me. I'm literally looking at what would be like an old parlor room, right? I see like the little bar off to the side, and he's saying the word, I was a mathematician. I'm a mathematician. And he would go and he would play cards like for money because he was a mathematician. He understood cards almost like a swindler type, but not necessarily. He just knew cards. And then he's showing me there was a back room, and he ended up doing tarot with it. And what he is showing me is that the mayor, like the local mayor, and the people that were high up within the community, they would go and they would see him.
Oh
And
my
so
God.
he would help them in their town make decisions. And he's almost like showing me that they would even look at calendars to know, all right, this is a really good time for you to bring this into the town. And this is when people, like, he would do future casting with the mayor, because again, it's that math and that science. So I just had to address him because he's been standing right in
Like,
front of me for like
finally.
15 minutes now. And so I think that he came through as just a confirmation is, yeah, it's math and science, like math and science. And then they're using these cards for divination, and it's for helping. And I think it's also bringing forward the message to let the listeners know, a lot of people that you perceive to be in positions of bunny-eared power use this.
Oh yeah.
They use tools of divination to help them. We covered on another podcast. Reagan had his astrologist, and he wouldn't even address the nation. He would not do anything unless he conferred with his astrologist first. And that's why he won so much public admiration for him, because she would pick the proper dates. This is when the energy is on your side. People love hearing from you on this day.
Oh yes. And this goes back, I mean, that goes so far back, and that's why presidents who are obviously in the know are able to have access to those things in modern times. But this does go all the way back. Like, they had generals, Napoleon's guys, they were basing their battle plans off of astrological transits throughout the day. They would stop, they would wave flags and say stop because something was happening, and then we would wave the other flag to start it up again because of the inclinations of these certain conjunctions slash transits. And it just really goes to show that the fear around divination, astrology, it doesn't come from a genuine self-preservation. Our first strongest instinct as people, even as little infants and fetuses, is self-preservation. They want to survive. Life wants to preserve itself and survive. And so certain things that we have fear of, we are damn sure supposed to have fear of. Sharks, heights, poison, whatever our fears are, speed, all kinds of things that we are inherently afraid of, because those things will kill us. So people are not afraid of things like tarot and divination because they're going to kill us. People are afraid of divination and astrology because someone told them that if they used them, they would burn in hell for all eternity, which to me is way worse than just death. Give me, I'll take the clean death over the idea of a sullied eternal existence burning in hell. Like, so the fear put on people from these centralized powers of darkness on planet Earth, it's mind control. It's very, very old magic too. Fear magic, very, very old. And so in that sense, it is kind of difficult to break, but the formula is still the same. Sunlight, truth, same thing. Light shining on a bunch of roaches, they scatter. They can't withstand the truth. They can't stand in the sunlight. This is why they say vampires don't like sunlight. Is the idea that the some frequencies just shake out the secrets, they shake out the deception, they break the spells. And so if everybody had maybe, because my goal isn't to just get everybody aware of tarot and using tarot. I really don't care. Like, this is my path, this is my passion, and it's what I do in my little corner of my little world here. But it's not something I'm like, everybody should read tarot cards. Like, no, like if you're drawn to it, if it brings you joy, if it's something that you feel you can help people with, then by all means, like absolutely walk that path. But I think the idea of the fear and demonization of things like astrology and divination is that if the average person, if the average peasant like myself had access to the knowledge of the stars and the knowledge of certain healing, properties, and if we had our own sovereign streamlined link with source creator, there would be no need for these centralized powers, these minions of darkness on planet earth. And so they are the ones acting. The true fear is actually coming from them, the vicars, the clergymen, the church of the world, and they are acting out of self-preservation. That primal fear of getting found out, of getting exposed, of being sort of obliterated by the alternative. That's why they try so hard. That's why they fight with everything that they have, tooth and nail, until the cycle is up, because the rest of us are just kind of going with the flow, and the soul evolves throughout incarnations. And it's like, I think we just all woke up this one, like came into this lifetime, and we're like, okay, I think we're ready now. You guys ready to take these guys out? That's what it feels like to me, is like their spells don't even work on folks like us. Like it's just just falls to the ground.
Yeah.
So it's, if everybody had a little bit, just some base knowledge of of elemental things, earth, water, air, fire, and ether, that those things make up all matter. Do you know that is, you already know this, but that is just, that's magic 101, is know your elements and know the foundational properties and composition of all matter. That's it. But the church would tell you that's witchcraft. And it's like, no, it's not. It's literally science. It's the real science, not mainstream academia.
What we're made of. It's
Right,
literally
that's
what we're made of.
Witch, it's like, oh my God, I don't know, I can't. I still to this day have a hard time watching any footage of any witches being burned or anything like that. Like, I'll watch it, but I'll cry. You know what I mean? I'll be overcome with emotion, because it's just like, it's tough, because it was real. It really happened. It's probably still happening in some places behind the scenes.
Oh yeah, I know. It's the one of my earlier guests on this, Becca Francis, talked about that. It's called the witch wound, and it's we carry it over into different lifetimes. And you can, sometimes when you're reading someone, you can feel the mark of the witch wound that's still within them. Sometimes it's what blocks a lot of women and men too from accessing their full potential, their full purpose, why they're here, is because they're still carrying that witch wound.
Is there any like way that she or you like outlined how to kind of remedy that? Is there anything that can be done?
I dealt with my own witch wound. And I just had to surrender to myself. And it's both equally easy to do, but one of the hardest things that you do as well. One thing that when I started doing this work, my guides actually told me that I had to do this. Not that, I mean, it's all free will. Always keep that in mind, but strongly encouraged. Every time somebody asked me what I do, I had to be honest and tell them, I am a psychic medium and I'm an energy healer. And they said the reason why you have to be honest and tell people is every time you hear yourself say those words
Out loud.
out loud. So they said it's not even because we want the other person to hear. You need to hear yourself saying that, because you're reclaiming yourself, and it's anchoring in all the way to the ground in the seat of your soul who you are. So every time you claim it, you're coming back to yourself. So that's what I would say is it was the quickest way for me to claim it. And so now, what was a very difficult thing for me in the beginning, I can't wait for somebody to ask me what I do. Like I'm literally giddy, like, oh, I hope they ask me. I hope they ask me. because yeah, I mean, I'll never be moved. I am now standing on an unshakable foundation. But I love seeing the responses from the people. And more cases than not, they are extremely excited and they want to know more.
Oh yeah.
I've only maybe had like 2 negative encounters in 6 years of claiming this.
That's not too bad. That's not too bad.
No, it's been, I mean, I had the big one, which I covered on the other show, where my daughter wasn't allowed admittance to a school.
Oh, that's so sad.
That's all right. We've moved on from that. But yeah, so that's my only thing is whatever, find what you're naturally drawn towards and claim it. And just claim it.
I like that.
Yeah, and surrender to it. I'm so glad that you said it. We're not talking about these things in this in these shows to say, oh, we want everyone to be a medium or everyone to be a psychic or everyone to be a tarot reader. That's not what this is about. We just want to remove the fear level of it and know that this is a possibility. And if you get excited about anything we talk about or it resonates in any way, maybe take a look.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's, and the thing is, yeah, I mean, 100%, I'm not out here wanting other people to, delve into the occult. It's not about that. It's more about, you know, clearing out every other voice in your head other than your own. And really asking yourself, completely minded, no, you're just no walls, nothing to hide behind, and ask yourself, like, what do you freaking love? What gets you so excited and so hyped and something you just can't get enough of? And, for some people, it's a list of things. Do you know what I mean? But like for me, this was really, it's like my journey with tarot brought me so much more than just, clients for tarot reading.
Yeah.
It brought me and removed for me relationships that were extremely, toxic, relationships that didn't need to be there anymore. And it's just, I think with anything where you're really walking in your truth, kind of at the absolute, behest of everything else, like nothing else can matter. You have to, like you said, when you are just almost painfully authentic, because there's nothing left to do. You have done everything. You have worn every hat that you needed to. You have been everything you needed to be for everybody else. You have, played the game. You played by the rules. You did this, you did that. And at the end of it, you're still drained, unhappy, unfulfilled, confused, lost. That's the most exciting time, because that's like, okay, we need to talk to the boss. Who's the boss? Your higher self, or your creator, and it was like, just, it's like you said, surrendering to yourself. And it's like, what is it that I'm here for? Like, what do I want to do? Like, how do I want to impress upon this life? And for me, it was really helping people understand themselves and navigate their lives using the system of tarot. And so, yeah, I play with the label witch. Some people are like, why would you call yourself a witch knowing everything that we know about the elite? And it's like, listen, they don't get to keep black cats, the number 13, the name witch. They get to see, and that's another thing, is Hollywood, the CIA, the centralized dark forces, they love to monopolize and hoard information. They do it by sort of poisoning the waters and making it unpalatable, and unfavorable, undesirable to everybody else. Classic tactic. Like it's like strategy 101. But the idea is that these things can be utilized for good. And is everything okay?
Mhm.
Okay. Sorry, I'm mom life. I totally get it. But not everybody has to get into tarot. I mean, it's whatever you're into. I know people who got into astrology and like within 3 months, they were like, oh my God, like I understand why I do the things that I do. And it's like, there are some people that would call you satanic. Like there are some people that would call, tell you that you're going to burn in hell. And I just think that that's such an archaic, outdated means of gatekeeping potent information that can actually help humanity on our journey, and so yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's the reason why we share this, and I can the after healing sessions and after a mediumship read, the response is, I feel so much calmer. I feel better in my body. I'm sleeping better. I feel that I can get through life easier. Even, it's empowered me. I understand a bit more. Um, we share all of this because we have, both you and I, we've heard the results of it. And it's giving people back a sense of they belong to themselves and nobody else. It's their energy, it's their guides, it's their loved one, it's their path. Um, and to know that it's just knowing sometimes even just they're not alone. They're not alone.
When
So
you mentioned having gotten really quite, um, generally favorable results when you tell people the work that you do, and you know like for I think it's getting better and better. It's an indicator that that sort of energy it sort of undergoes a quickening process. It's like once the light comes in, little cracks of it then the cracks get larger and larger and larger, and the floodgates of light open up through people, through human beings in the world, allowing this light to flow in. And if you're looking at the right places, if you're paying attention, you can actually see the minions of darkness flee. You can see them get uncomfortable. You can see them be sort of burned slash irritated slash triggered by this outflux of light, this flowing of light through people and the information that we share, and deeds that we do and whatnot. That's how the light floods into this world. And you can see certain beings. Some of them are invisible, some of them are inside of people, some of them are obvious, some of them are less obvious, but you can see them almost move away because, again, self-preservation. They can't help it. There's danger. They're about to be exposed. They're about to be found out. That is the primal fear of the predator as it works within people, inside of people on planet Earth. So yeah, I think it's great. I love the whole witch wound thing. That kind of gives me some inspiration to get into for my Patreon people. I think they'll be really interested in that, actually.
that's so great. Thank you so much for coming on the show and being so open and sharing your gifts of tarot and your insights. I'm gonna close out with the poem I do every show. The ashes going higher, the smoke filling the sky. Oh, you didn't see my ancestors coming for me behind. As you light the flame of fear, burning away the inner voice rumbling near. Oh, you thought turning us to dust, we'd lay in the ground, burying your lust. But a fire burns in our blood, memories drum through our veins. We are the burnt witches returned, the ones you thought you burned away. But our voices rise together and echo from a deep place, Our hearts, they do not tremble. We've come to awaken and help you grow. Thank you so much, Jenny. And how can everyone find you to get tarot reads, join your Patreon? Where can they find you?
That was beautiful, Abby. Every time, like when you first posted it, and then I like, oh my God, it's just, I love that so much. Those channels right there, was it not?
Yeah, it was.
Like, yeah, it totally was. So if anybody's interested in getting a reading with me, my website is jennyconstantine.com. That's also the channel, my YouTube channel. And then I also have a Patreon, which is Jenny Moonstone on Patreon. And I do some weekly divination work for my people if they have general questions or specific questions. it's pretty much just a weekly show where we answer everybody's questions using the tarot, and it's growing and it's awesome and it's just amazing. So thank you so much for having me on, Abby. And I knew this was going to be fun. I knew we were going to have a great time.
Thank you so much, Jenny. And thank you for all listeners at home for tuning in for another episode of Burnt Witches. To re-listen to today's episode or to catch any other shows, please go to host Abby Lynn's website at abbylynn.co, where you can also find merchandise and other recordings. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you around the fire for the next one.